All right.
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. All right, recording now as well. So, Christine shared me this outline of a CommCare app that she wants to build. And so what we're gonna do is talk a little bit about what CommCare is and then try and build this. So just in advance of this, I started to try and think about what is currently available to learn how to use CommCare. So I started making just a skeleton document myself on resources that are around. And so just to be clear, first of all, what I'm trying to do here is develop an app in CommCare, which is different than like survey design. So survey design is an art in itself. Like which questions do I ask? How do I ask them? The wording, what ordering and stuff. That's another science, so maybe there's a different forum for that. I heard Will from the data team might be putting on a session in Senegal later this month, if anybody's around, specifically on that topic, survey design. But today we're just going to be talking about like how do you actually make the app in CommCare. So what I asked Christine to do before coming here was come up with a few things ahead of time. So first of all, what are the questions that you have? And then like, what is the logical flow? So if this, then what happens next? Or if something else happens, what direction do you go in the app? So having that logical flow chart is a good thing to have. And then also knowing who your users are, like have a list of the agents or field team members that are going to be actually out there using the app. Those are some things to get ready before you even start. And next, I wanted to point out that there's a few really good links here that I think will be useful as you like start to learn more about CommCare. The first one is the CommCare documentation homepage. So I'm just going to open this up in a new tab and we'll take a look. So this is also accessible through like the main CommCare portal, but this is how I learned how to use CommCare, just entirely this website. So and it really does start from the basics. You can see just the fundamentals, and then there's a bunch of little tutorials, so you can sort of progressively learn more and more complex things. And it gets really advanced into programming some really complex integrations and all that stuff. But this will be a really good resource. And one page, we'll look at one of the pages in a second. But then another thing I wanted to point out, I think I invited everybody who was on the calendar invite to join #CommCare on Slack. So that channel has been kind of dead for years. But what I'm imagining is like if all of you are out there trying to make apps yourselves, then that can be a place where you can go and just say like, how do I do this or that, and get some answer from somebody else in the group or me or anybody that might have an idea. So you're all on that channel now. That should be a good resource. Eventually there will be some resources on Confluence that I'm hoping to add in there. Nothing yet, but eventually. And then there is like a sort of a similar type of ask a question and other people answer you forum for CommCare. That's helped me out in a few cases too. But then I also just wanted to talk really quickly, like if you're thinking about using a CommCare app, why might you choose that versus Google Forms? Does anybody have like something to say about that? Like why are you interested in using CommCare as opposed to just using Google Forms? Can anyone give me some use case or experience?
Well, for me, I would say it's because we want to be able to use it offline, because with Google Forms you can't. You need some internet connection. And also, I guess the flow chart is a bit more, it can be more intricate, at least I imagine, and easier to to skip whole parts if they are
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the two biggest reasons why you would want to use CommCare over Google Forms. You know, if your people are out in the field in remote areas, then there's really no comparison. Like, otherwise you have to set up something like a paper tool, a paper survey, and then they have to fill it out at night. And that's not ideal always. Like, that can work with a pretty simple survey, but if it gets complex or you need to make changes, then it becomes hard. And then, yeah, you're right. Like, you can do really complex logic, different flows with CommCare, but in Google Forms that becomes a huge mess really fast. And but otherwise, like, you know, Google Forms does have some advantages. Like, it's really easy to make a form in Google Forms. It's a little bit more complex in CommCare, and it's also really easy to get your data in Google Forms. Like, it just goes right into a Google Sheet, no work needed. With CommCare, it's going to take you'll probably have to work with the data team, and they'll set up like a integration for you to put your data in either a Google Sheet somewhere, or maybe like in Metabase. You might be able to have a table in Metabase with your project sometime soon. So I just wanted to touch on that, just so everybody's clear about like what the difference between the two are. I think that's a pretty important thing to know about. And before we actually like go and do an app, I just wanted to look at a few like really important tools I think that'll be good for you guys as you're starting out. One of them is this page called Fundamentals, CommCare Fundamentals. And this is you should all actually go through this, and it's so useful. I'll just go through really quick and summarize things for you as best I can. It's a really good intro to the concept. So, CommCare overview. I found there's some good images in here that kind of explain concepts really well. So CommCare is basically, there's two parts of it. There's what the user sees on their mobile app, on their phone, and then there's also the headquarters, which is CommCareHQ.org. This is where all the management of the app goes on, like where you actually build the app, where you manage the, oh yeah, absolutely, sorry. Sending this link in the chat. Thanks, Jeremy. I think that should be, let me make sure it's available for everybody. Nope. Okay, now it should work. Might have to refresh or something. I'll just send it again just in case. Okay. Anyways, back to this. So there's what the user sees on the mobile app, which they just download through the Google Play Store. It's just an app like any other app they have on their phone. And CommCare HQ is where you actually do the building of the app and the deployment of it. You can also access the data, create and manage users there. So you as like a manager of the team or of the activity would be in there, and your users would be in the mobile app. So let's see. You can use it on other types of phones, but basically smartphones are the way to go these days. Let's see, I'll go to structure. So just some things to note, like don't try to use it on Internet Explorer. It's not going to work well. Just use Chrome or Firefox. I don't think anybody should be using Internet Explorer anymore. And what you'll see when you first load up CommCare HQ is this. You'll see a dashboard, a main page. You'll see a couple of tabs up here: reports, data, users, and applications. Applications is where you'll actually find your apps. And let's see. So there's two things to note there in CommCare, there's two basic units, I guess. One is a form. So a form is something you already should be familiar with. It's a digital version of a paper-based tool. It's what you see in Google Forms. And you can set up all sorts of different question types like text, numbers, telephone numbers, and then all sorts of multiple choice questions. Also GPS, that's something you can't do in Google Forms. Media, you can get videos and photos and have them be scanned. And there's also, you can create menus, so you can put things in folders and have multiple forms that they can access. There's something called case lists, which maybe we'll get to at the very end of this call, which are super useful. And moving right along, there's a concept of a web user, and so like you would be a web user, and that you're using the web interface to make the app, and then your users are called mobile workers. So that's just an important term, I guess, to know about as you look through the documentation. And let's see, what I wanted to get to was data in CommCare. We'll get to case management maybe later on. So the way it works is your user has the application downloaded on their phone, and they fill out forms when they're offline. Well, they don't have to be online. And once they connect, then they can submit the forms, and then the forms that they have filled out then get sent through Wi-Fi or the cell system to CommCare servers. And then once they're there, then we can download that data. And then also data goes in the other direction too. So like, say you make a change to an application and you need your users to update the application to see new questions, or you might have a different list of farmers that you want them to see. They'll need to synchronize or update the application in order to get that data in the other direction from the server. That's an important concept to know about. It goes in both directions. And another thing to note, when you get an export of data, there's a few things that you're getting. You're getting the answers to the questions that you put on your form, but then you're also getting what's called metadata, which is data about data. And it's things like who filled out the form. So like the username of the person that filled it out, or what time they started filling it out, what time they finished filling it out, what time they sent it in, your GPS coordinates if you configure it that way. So there's all kinds of other data that could be really useful for you when you're making a dashboard, like you want to keep track of which person has sent in how many forms or something like that. So metadata is data that's also attached to your export. That's not the questions you put in there, but it's also really useful. And next up, I want to talk about, I think that's about it. That's kind of the basics. Maybe the rest I can bring up as we're making an app. Any questions before I go any further though?
Do you have to do anything in particular to get the GPS metadata, or does it come naturally as one uses the app?
It doesn't come by default, but you can either add it as one of the questions. So like the user has to actively, click a button that will get the GPS coordinates. But it also is an option to make your form collected in the background. It's not on by default, but you can set it up so that it will be. And then it's part of the metadata on that form. So I'll show you where you can find that in the form. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna move right along then. I would suggest next step would be take a look at that again in more detail, and then try the beginner tutorial, and then once you're comfortable with that, there's a whole bunch of other tutorials you can do that yeah, we'll let you learn new features. So, and then maybe I'll add some things into here as we go along, but there's a few other really useful pages I've found as I'm making apps. Like one of them is all about what kinds of logic exists in CommCare, and this is a really good page to help just understand what's possible. And they oftentimes have some examples that you can usually just cut and paste or modify. So common logic and calculations, that's a really useful page. Functions, so I put here, like in spreadsheets, like in Google Sheets or Excel, you can use kind of really similar functions, and those can be useful in a lot of cases as well. So if I come across anything else, I'll keep adding them to this page, and then that'll be easy to find for you. But anyway, let's just jump into actually making an app then. And so I guess the first thing to do would be to understand what it is we're really trying to do by looking at this kind of a document. So Christine, I got a chance to just scan over this. So it looks like we have 2 users, and it's only going to be in 1 zone and 2 villages. So that's really simple. That simplifies a few things for us. And then looking at the application, it seems like you have sort of an initial interview with a farmer, like a few questions you want to ask right from the start. But then following that, there'll be lots of follow-up surveys with that same farmer. But the questions will be slightly different each time, depending on what the situation is, right? So you have germination. So once the germination happens, then you probably don't want this to keep happening anymore. You probably don't want them to keep having to put in how much, if the plant germinated or not. You want it to just skip to the next section, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say starting from here, development de la plante, then from that part, it's going to be the same until harvest.
Okay. So the very beginning, it'll just be showing germination. It'll just be asking, did the plants germinate yet? Until they germinate. And then once they germinate, at that point, is it going to start asking about fertilization?
Yeah, and fertilization, they're going to have to do that survey 20 days after planting. Okay. So by that time, they should be done with germination, logically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right after the germination is over, they'd be concerned with fertilization, but that's only going to occur once, right? They only really need to collect this information once at the time of fertilization, and then from there, it's just every single week they'll do this over and over and over again with that same farmer.
Exactly.
Okay. That's pretty well understood for me. So I think what we can try and do first is just try and make these kind of subforms separately, just to get a feel for what are the different data types here, how would you get those question types, and then after that, then we can start to think about how should we structure it and control the logic. So I'm just going to be bouncing back and forth between those 2 pages probably, and then if needed we can go and look at some of the documentation as well. So the first thing to do is to actually go into CommCareHQ.org. If you probably will have to log in for the first time. If you don't have a login yet for Migro or for Migro's CommCare platform, just go to the help desk and ask for app building permissions, and that'll give you probably not access to all this stuff, but at least you'll be able to come in here and make an app and work on an app, and then that should be enough for what you need to do. And then if you need to get access to the data, come to the data team and we can help you out with that. But when you first log in, you'll see this screen, and let's just make a new app. So we just scroll all the way down. You'll see that we've been using CommCare for a really long time, So there's a lot of apps here. So at the very bottom, I'll just click on new application, and that's going to create like a new blank one. Nothing will be here. So what do you want to call this, Christine?
Suivi, Visa Bio.
Visa Bio.
Ouais, suivi,
Maybe I'll add a year on there just so that it shows up at the top of the screen when you
Super.
click on this. And okay, so we have an app here. This is what we're looking at here is like the app builder platform. So here it's already giving me some clues. I can add forms or modules and forms to my app. So just some terminology. This whole thing is the app. Then I can add forms into my app, and then the user's phone, what they see on their phone, it sort of mirrors what is over here. So once we actually start adding some things, you'll see how that works. And this is a nice little tool here that you can like hide or pull out if needed, and just test like in real time what your app looks like to the user. Sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, but so sometimes it's useful to just actually load it up on your phone too, but this usually works quite well, just for quickly testing out what you're doing. So first thing to do is to click on, actually what I'm going to do is go into the settings here of this app, and there's some like default settings that aren't there in the beginning, and it's nice to just have them available for me. I'm just going to click on all these things. That's just going to add like more functionality to the app if we need it. So I'm just going to the settings of the app, this little gear here, and clicking add-ons and saving that. So there might be a few features that we want later on that otherwise wouldn't have showed up. Oh, here's an example on advanced settings. One of the options here is auto capture location all forms. So maybe I'll just click that, because that's gonna, I mean, not that what you were asking about earlier is, can you make it so that it will always capture GPS coordinates? Yes. This is not checked by default, but now I checked it. So all the forms I make in here will have GPS coordinates attached to them. So I'll save that. Now, also, you can change the language. I think by default it's English for some reason, but I think that is not necessary for you. So let's do French and save that. You can have multiple languages, so I don't know if you know, Ibrahim, you over there in Tanzania, maybe you want to use English and like Swahili version, and you might be able to do something like that, have multiple languages. Okay, so I think that's set up the basics here. Next, I want to start adding something to this. So when I click the add button over here, it gives me two choices. Do you want to make a survey to collect data once, or do you want to make a case list to track items over time? So I think in your case, you actually do want a case list, because in this case, your item is a farmer, right? Like a farmer, it's the same farmers that they're going to be working with over and over and over again. And you want to track data that's linked to that same farmer, right? So you could do that with surveys where you're just collecting data once, but what you'll have to do is every time they fill out a survey, in order for you to know who they're following up with, you'll have to like have them like write the farmer's ID or something like that. And that opens up opportunities to make mistakes. Like that's one of the big problems with Google Forms. if you want to be tracking like results linked to a specific person, they have to keep entering the ID every single time. And you know, there's ways to improve the quality of that, like maybe you make them enter it multiple times, but it's almost always going to cause some errors. So that's, if you really are doing multiple things with the same person, it's better to do a case list. So, but what I'm going to do first is not do that yet. We're going to set that up at the end, but I just wanted to like do a survey first to start to look at like how you make these questions. And we can always like we can copy what we make here into a proper case list. So, okay, so what I wanted to do first was just make this initial section information generale. So we want to get the name, the ID, and the village of the farmer. So I'm just going to start like copying this information over. No need to like retype it. So now I made that new survey. I'm in the survey here, and we see 3 new bits here. Survey, this is where your questions go. This is where you like put the outline of your questions. And this is where you're going to see like the settings for the questions. And this is for the case stuff, which I'll just hide this for now. We don't really need this quite yet, but that's going to be useful later on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add a question. And the first thing you get is a choice of what kind of question. So this is going to be farmer's name. Oh, actually, before we go on it with that, I'm going to click on here and just click on the form name, information generale, and save that. So I just click that little pencil up there. So now here, add a question. The first question you had was name, right? So I'm going to choose a text input. So I think if you hover over these, well, maybe not. But yeah, text input is for like when someone's actually going to be writing a name or something like that. So I'm going to take the name you have here, and over on this side, when I have a question selected, then what you see over here is all of the options for that question. So display text, this is what the user is going to see. And so that's what I want them to see here, nom de la productrice. Question ID, this is what you'll see on the data export. So you might have a case where like the display text, what the user sees is a really long sentence or like sometimes a paragraph, but you don't want that to be like the header of your column on your data export. Like you want something a lot more simple. So what CommCare will usually do is just propose you, like right here it's saying, how about nom de la productrice? Would that be a good title for the column? And yeah, like that sounds pretty good. So if I just leave it like that and I click away, it automatically puts that there. But if I want to change it, like if I did write like a whole sentence there, it's probably going to be way too much text. So I might want to simplify that down. We'll probably see that later on. So again, this is what the user sees, display text. This is what your column header on your data is going to say. And it's good to think about these. You want to think about what these column headers are looking like, because it'll make it easier for you to work with the data later if you have a really nice, well thought out column header. So don't just neglect this part here. Any questions before I go on? Feel free to raise your hand as so, or post questions in the chat. All right, moving right along. What else do you see here? Required. So this is a really important thing to usually have checked. This is a common mistake people have when they make these forms, is they don't click required, and that means like you'll check your data later on and you'll notice that like half of it's missing, half of it's blank, and it's because it wasn't a required question and the user was able to just skip over it. So really important to always check required. unless there are some cases where it might not be necessary, but usually it should be there. We'll get into this part here, logic, later on. All right, so next question we have is ID. So for this one, it's not going to be a text anymore, I don't think. It should probably be a number type. And so there's a few number types here. You have integer, phone number or numeric ID, or decimal. So if you want to have something point something something something, make sure you have decimal. You can also actually do that with this one too. But I think for ID, either integer or this is fine. So let's just do integer to keep it simple. So ID, and I like ID there as well, and I want that to be required. Next question, village. So here, this might be a one where we want to have a multiple choice, because in your case you only have 2 villages. So let's pick multiple choice, calling that village. Village is also a good name, I think, and I want that to be required. So now I see add choice. So here is where I can actually list out all the possible villages. So the first one you said was Chare. And the second one, Bun Faso. Oh, it didn't copy. Not sure why that wasn't working. So something that you might have noticed there is when I put Chare, it did not put an E on the end, because it does not, these choice values here, what will end up being the column header, you can't have certain characters like accent aigu. It's going to yell at me normally, I think, if I try and do that. So yeah, just something to note. You also, I think, can't have spaces. If you try and do a space, it'll automatically put a underline, a underscore. Okay. And next up, date semi du bisap. So here, yes, what do we got? How to define a multiple choice or single choice? Good question. So I'm wondering if there's going to be an example of a question where Christine, this question, Kuchu précédent sur le même sol, do you want that to be like just the last thing or any of the last things? Like, could they potentially be selecting multiple of these?
Yes. There not another question? Okay, so here, culture avoisinante, just after
Okay.
Semi.
Okay, I see.
This one
Yeah.
can be multiple choice.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, so Mamadou, we'll get to that question very soon.
Yeah.
So, but the next one we wanted to put was date du semi du bisap. So add question, and date is one of the option types here. And so you can have date, or you can have a time, or you can have date and time. So I'm going to pick just date. We don't need time necessarily. So date du semi du bisap. Here's an example where I think I might simplify this a little bit. We know it's bisap, so we can simplify that just to date du semi. And yeah. So next question is culture avoisinante de la parcelle de bisap bio. So what crops are there around the bisap? So here, under multiple choice, we've got 2 options: multiple choice and checkbox. So what these are like, what you might be heard of is called radio buttons. So like when it's a circle, it means you can only select one option. But if it's a checkbox, which you can change. You can either like, when you're selecting the multiple choice, just choose checkbox, but sometimes in the question here, you can also change the question type. So right here, I can just change it to checkbox. And now I can have multiple options and they can select multiple ones. So this is what we have. Culture avoisinante, la parcelle de la parcelle de bissap bio required. Well, actually, here's an example, like maybe we don't want to do that. So I'm going to shorten that question ID a little bit. And add choice. Now you can put whatever you want here. So we can just think, I don't know, what are all the crops possible? Mice,
Maïs, mil, gombo, pastèque, arachide,
mice, meal, sorghum, gombo. So I'll probably stop there, and you can, this is going to be your app, so you can always come in here and add more of those as you wish.
Yep.
And so why did I say like maybe this wouldn't want to be required? Because like it's possible that actually none of the options, maybe there are no crops next to it. Maybe it's just in the middle of some uncultivated land. So you could even, if maybe you want to set up some question that if nothing's selected, yeah, I'll do that actually. So this will be a quick introduction to the logic. And actually, something I wanted to show you guys. You can like right now, the way this is set up, each of these questions will show up on a separate page. So let's actually just take a look at that. If I go over here to this test environment, I can click the little button on the bottom that was flashing red, and that's just gonna refresh this. So it'll match what's in here. So if I click on start, add a question to information. Okay, I already did that. Maybe I have to synchronize. I said this thing sometimes just doesn't work very well. It thought that this was empty, so maybe just needed to still not add a question to the form in surveys menu. Oh, I see what happened. I need to save this. I haven't clicked save yet, so it still thinks that it's blank. So if I had closed my browser right now, like when I tried to close the browser or change pages, it says, are you sure you have stuff that you didn't save? So this is a save button. It's good to just click this every once in a while and make sure that you're not losing your work. So, but it'll remind you every time you try and change pages, like if you were to try and close this browser or go to a different page and you had unsaved changes, it's going to prompt you and be like, hey, you haven't saved yet. So I saved now. Now if I refresh, it should be good. Yeah, here we go. So I'm seeing like the same folder structure that I have over here. You saw surveys, and then now if I had multiple forms here, I would see all those on this page, but I'm just seeing one, information general. So now I've got the name of the farmer, and you'll notice I can't go ahead without entering something because I clicked required. So Christine, and then ID. So this also, like I can't enter, this is gonna already do some data validation for me because I chose the type of question. It's gonna make sure I don't put spaces or I don't put other characters. So that's a nice thing about choosing the right type of question. And then we got our village selector and the date. And something you might I'll show you validation that you might want to use for that. And then here we go, culture avoisinante. So right now, I can actually, I can actually go ahead, and it's not going to yell at me because I didn't click required. So something I might want to do is maybe have like a choice at the bottom there, just saying like none of these. So I can show you how that is done. So something you notice that every one of those questions was on a different page, you know, like, and that might not be necessary. Like you can probably bunch all these into one page. So one way to do that is to start go over this question tree over here and start grouping them together. That's actually a really good way to control like the logical flow, is if things are grouped that are similar or belong on the same page. So if I click on add a question, you see here there's a question type called groups. And one of them is just like a folder called group. But then this one, question list, this is really handy because anything you put in it will show up on the same page. So I'm just going to take this question and select this one, select this one. I'm holding down Control and selecting these questions. Actually, I'm just going to select these three, and then just drag them and place them. You can see the little arrow next to my cursor. That's saying where it's going to go. So if I were to put them here, now it's going to be after this question list, but it's pointing at the question list. It'll put those questions in there. So now you can see it's indented a little bit. That means these questions are in the question list. So, and now I can just grab this entire question list and move this back to the top of my form. So, and you can even give this a name. Info general. And so now if I go back here, save this, refresh, look in my survey, now you see that it's all on the same page. So this makes it's a little more concise and a little bit quicker to fill out maybe for the user. And the dot. And now this. So what I was thinking of doing is just saying like, make a question list here, put this on that page, call this culture avoisinante, and then I missed an N there, and then at the bottom of it, I'm gonna put, let's see, I'm gonna put a question, just like multiple choice question, but only have one option. D'autres cultures. Pas de voisin. That's gonna be the name of the question, and maybe also the name of the option. And so now what I'm going to do, I made this question required, but what I want to do is change the display condition. So now I'm getting down to this logic. This is where you're starting to control, like, should this show or not? And what you can do is, I'm going to hide this so you can see that. There's some helper tools. You can click on this little button next to it. And it takes you to a little like wizard here that you can use to set up your logic. So what I want to do is say, show this question if all of these things are true. So if everything in here is true, then show this question. But actually, this might not work for this specific question type. I think what I want to do is say, quit this, and there's a function, so I'm going to actually use one of those functions I mentioned, which is over here. So the one I'm looking for is called count selected. Count selected. There we go. Count selected. So it counts the number of items selected in a multi-selected list. So I'll just grab this and then go back over here. So count selected, and then put in the question. So here, with my cursor there, like in that spot that I want, and then I'm going to go over here and just drag this question over, and actually anywhere I put it in this box, it'll go right to where my cursor was. So what this does is, it's a function like in Excel, saying it's going to look at this question and count the number of options that I have selected currently, and this will give me back the number. So say I don't select any, then the count, it's going to be 0. So what I want to do is say equals 0. So now, if the number of things that I've selected is 0, then this is going to show, this is going to be displayed. But if it's not 0, then it will be hidden. So that's the idea of these display conditions. You give it something to evaluate, and it's going to show that question if your expression is true. But if it's not true, then it will not show it. So we can just look at what that looks like now. Hopefully I did that right. So I have to restart here and then go in. I'm not going to keep typing her name. And then .semi. And now, so you see this question here now because I have nothing selected. But as soon as I select something, it goes away. Because now this function is returning 1. Now it's returning 2. Now it's returning 3. So that's how that function works. Those functions, there's a ton of them. They're super useful. So now the way this works is, if there were no crops next door, you could just click here and go on. But if I didn't click that, and I didn't click anything here, then somebody tries to keep going, it's going to be like, hey, at least tell me that there's no crops there. Just so I know that you didn't just ignore this question. So it's a good way to just verify that somebody did something the way you hoped. So, okay, got that. Next up, let's just quick do all these questions. Utilise des engrais chimiques. So this is talking about the neighboring farms or the farmer, the BSAP farmer on this plot.
Les cultures avoisinantes?
For the culture avoisinant.
Yeah, it means like we're asking about what other crops are planted around.
Okay.
By the neighboring farmers.
Okay. So in the case that there were no neighboring crops, then this question is irrelevant, right?
Not really. We want to know what is around, even if it's nothing. That's it.
Okay, because what it's saying is...
Oh, you're meaning this one, the fertilizer?
Yeah. Do they use?
Yeah, if there is,
Mhm.
yeah, sure. If there is no one, it's irrelevant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, in case there were no neighboring crops, I don't know. Maybe it's never gonna happen, but it could, I guess, right? So we can make some logic for that. So I think, like, in my opinion, I would make like another page here. If I go the next page here, I'll call this again culture avoisinante pratique. And then add a multiple choice question. Oops, this. And that's got to be required. So yes, no, or don't know. Oui, non, je ne sais pas. Okay, and then utilise-t-il des pesticides chimiques? So here's something you can do. This next question is almost identical, right? So I can just click Control C, and then with this question selected again, Control V, and it just copies the same question down below. The only difference is the question ID. Now I'll put copy one of. So what I can just do is give this a different name and display text. So when I deleted the copy of, notice that it just said you have another question with the same ID, so you can't have that. So I have to say, what was this about? Pesticides? Yeah. So pesticide chimique. Okay, but otherwise the rest of that question is the same. So it's just a quick way to, move things along fast. And then la parcelle est bien séparée des voisins. Okay, and you want some images here. Okay, so I guess we can just say that and then have the image be one of the question options. So parcelle. Oui ou non. And so you think we want to also have an image attached to that. So this is another one of the next question types on here, image capture. So what should this be? What should this say? Like, prenez une photo de la plus prochaine parcelle or something like that? Or
Yes, like when it comes to the parcel, they should be able to show in a good way how well or how badly they are separated. So I would say prenez une photo de la séparation peut-être.
qui montre la séparation. Something like that.
Yeah.
So you can make this required, and then something that's important here is image size. So if you choose small, it's going to be completely, it's going to be tiny and it's not useful. So you probably want to do at least a large photo. Original, that might be really big, but large, in my experience, is pretty good. Like on your end, when you actually try and look at it, you'll actually be able to see what it's trying to do. So yeah, definitely do that. And okay, so that's image. And then finally, just like an open-ended question describing the separation. Yes, question.
What will be the impact of the size of the image when transferring the data from the mobile to the web server?
It's a good question. So we see here, this resizes it from the original size down to 0.5 megapixels. So maybe you can look up like for a JPEG, 0.5 megapixels, how big of a file size that is. But I think that's still a pretty small photo, relatively. Like probably not more than half a megabyte, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, Habib.
Clinton, I know this sounds funny, but this question is that when you say image capture, like what does the option actually display on the application? Does when you reach that question, suddenly camera opens and it asks us to take the picture, or does it ask the person to upload the picture, and how does the image capture that option work?
Yeah, maybe it's a good time to like get out of this environment a little bit, because I realize we're already at 1 hour and we're probably not going to achieve like everything that I was hoping for. So I think, Christine, if that's okay with you, maybe we could just stop here and like start to look at like how to actually get what I'm working on here onto a phone, and then we can even just see what that looks like, see what that that question specifically looks like on the user's phone. That's a good question. Because yeah, it's not going to work over here. You can't, if we get to that question, it's just going to say we can't display this question type on the sample thing. So what I'm going to do, one thing I wanted to do first before I do that is, remember how I put this on one page, all these questions about the neighboring plot? I did that because I don't want this page to even show if there are no neighboring plots, right? So here what I can do is, instead of selecting like every single question and saying like only show this if this is no, you know, I can just select the folder, the page that all those questions are on, and say don't even show this page if something. So what I actually want to do here is what? I don't want to show this page if this was checked. So the way to do that would be, with this page selected, go to display condition and go, and here's where it's pretty easy. You can just go grab this question, drop it there, click on equals, and then grab the option and drag that over. So now like that's already done. You could write that by hand, but it would be, you might make a mistake. So something to note, what it just did, it doesn't really matter where spaces are. So I could put like 12 spaces there and it's not going to make a difference. But what does matter are these little single quotes. If I were to try and if I didn't have those single quotes, it would give me an error and I wouldn't be able to make my app in the end. And then another thing to note, you don't have to write it like this. You can also, like in a simple case like that, here you can use that little helper tool and build that same logic here. So for example, I only want this to show when all these following things are true. So I can say, add an expression. I want this question to be equal to this. No, that's not true. That's not what I want. Actually, this is going to show when there are neighboring cultures, but this will be selected if there aren't neighboring cultures. So what I want to do is say is not equal to that. So only show this page if this question is not equal to no neighbors. Might be a little confusing, but I'm pretty sure that's what I want. And then now you can see how it wrote that in if anybody's ever like done any computer programming or something, you'll notice that the exclamation point and equal sign means not equal to. So this means that question is not equal to pas de voisin. So if I save that now, I can just see if that works. Anytime you're doing these logics, it's really good to just try it out. Like don't go too far into your app without trying it out, because you might have screwed something up and then you have to start over again. So it's good to just, when you make some logic thing like that, immediately go in and try it out. So here, if I click on peanuts, that question disappears, and now I get that question about all the neighboring cultures. Okay? But now if I didn't check that, and I check there's no neighbor, it brings me to the end of the form. There were no more questions after that, so this is meaning it's the end of the form. So that logic worked. So that was a way to like hide that specific question. There's a whole list of questions actually. So that's a little trick. Okay, so I wanted to look at the what the photo thing looked like on an actual phone. So you'll see here it just says, sorry, I can't do that here. So we have to go to actual phone to do that. So, all right, I've got my little app here. I want to see what this looks like on my phone. The thing to do is to make sure it's saved, and then come up here to the title of your app. You'll notice that it's been saying for a long time now, updates available to publish. This just means that I've clicked save at least once, and I haven't what's called deployed a new version, so or published a new version. So if I click on this, I'll go back to like the home page of this app, and this is blank now. There's nothing here. But what I want to do when it's telling me that there's a new version and I'm ready to make a new version that's available to the users, I can click on make a new version, and then I'll wait, and then it's got my version ready here. So it says it's version 14 because I've clicked save 14 times. And an important point here is it says in test by default. And so actually, if this were like the second or third version that I was making and I left it as in test, users in the field would not be able to get this version because I still have it in test mode. So that's something important to note. If I did want all my users to access this right now, I have to make sure to click released. Otherwise, you could tell them to update their app and they would try, but they wouldn't see this version that I'm trying to make. But I don't need this to be released yet. So the way you actually get one of these apps on a phone is to click on publish, and that brings up this window where you have a few options. Online install is almost always what you need. Offline install, it's possible to do this, but we won't go into that. But the two things that you're going to use are either this code or a barcode. So maybe we'll use a barcode, which is pretty easy to share. Like I've just been like copying that image and sharing it on Slack or something like that to the group I need, or that's usually a pretty good way. But what I'm going to do is just connect with my phone to this call, and then we can actually look at on my phone what this is going to look like. So just give me 1 second. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to take over the screen. And move this over here so we can see it on my recording. And all right, so if I go over to CommCare on my phone, which again is just an app like any other that I download on the App Store, what the users will see when they first open this up, I'm just going to uninstall these other apps that I have to show you what that would look like. They would see this screen, actually maybe something similar to it. They would see this screen. This is what they would see. So this is like blank CommCare with nothing in it, no apps, nothing. So the first thing it's asking for is either a barcode or a code. So what I could do is either take the this here or that code and enter that in there. So I'll just do the barcode. How am I going to do this on my screen here? Okay, so I click on the barcode, scan barcode application, and now I can just point it at the barcode, and it found it, and I have to be connected to the internet, and it's connected. So it's finding the app and it's downloaded now. So now you see up on the upper right, it says BSAT Bio, and so here, this is the login screen. So when they have an app, they'll see the name up top here. If they have multiple apps, which you can do, you can have up to I think 4 apps installed at one time. Then they'll see a little drop-down menu like right here above the login, which they can select some different app. That's something to note. But they have to log in, so I'm going to use my login and my password. And the first time you connect, it might have like a little bit of extra data to download. A lot in my case, I guess. So that's now downloaded. And one of the nice things about CommCare is it actually stays logged in for, I think, at least 24 hours after somebody connects. So like, say I'm using, I don't have to, maybe I won't have internet access for a while. Like even if I close the app and come back in later, it's still gonna be connected and I won't have to have like internet connection to connect. It just like keeps your session open for a little while. After a certain time period, it makes you reconnect, but it stays on for a while. So yeah, so here, this is what the user interface looks like at the home screen. And we already are a little bit familiar with this from our test environment over here. But so what I want to look at here is I might want to just sync just in case. Synchronizing is really important to do, like even when you just installed an app or just updated the app. Sometimes there's still like some extra bits of information that your phone doesn't have. And so it's really important to tell all users to synchronize. Like before they report a problem to their supervisor or to you, try synchronizing first. And in like 95% of the cases where there's an issue with somebody's app, it's because they haven't synchronized. So synchronizing is super easy to do and people just kind of forget to do it. So just a little tip for when you're actually out there working with users. So now if I click into here, click on surveys, now I'm in my survey here. What's kind of nice is like it knew that I'm trying to enter a number here, so it automatically gave me the number pad. And when you're actually using the phone, you don't actually have to click these arrows up on top. You can just swipe left or right. It's a lot easier way to navigate around. You notice this looks a little different, like the interface here compared to it was on the test environment. Hang on, I just wanted to show something. One issue here with these dates is it might be really easy for someone to accidentally move the year or something like that. I've seen that a lot, like somebody will say planting date August 3rd, 2074 or something like that. So like that would be a good case for doing like some validation on the date. So we can quickly look at how that might be done in here. So here's my date. Where is that? Here it is, data semi. So we looked at display condition, but there's also validation condition. So maybe I want to control, maybe like, I want the IDs to be like between 1,000 and 3,000 or something like that. I don't want them to be above or below that range. Or like for dates, I want the dates to be, you know, within a certain range just to try and prevent some errors. So what I can do is start building some conditions here. So I can go like, and grab the .semi, the BSAP, and drag that down in here. And you'll notice all it puts there. Oh, I'm not looking at the right screen, am I? Let me see if I can switch this. Is that better? Oh, I have to probably unpin this. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are actually still seeing your phone.
Oh, okay. All right, let me just stop sharing on my... You know, I'll just keep sharing on my phone to show you what the photo looks like. And then I'll come back and look at that validation. Okay, so we want to look at what the phone looks like, or the photo thing looks like. So here is what that photo question looks like. You can either take a picture, it gives the option to take a picture or choose an image. So taking a picture will just open up the camera app, and there you go. Like, you can just take the photo, and then it gives you the opportunity to verify, like, okay, you sure, does this look good for you? And then you can either click the trash button and redo it, or click the check mark and it'll add it in here, so you can get a little preview. Choose image would be like, it lets you go into your file system and actually find a photo that you took, you know, with your regular camera app before opening the app. So that's what that looks like. You can remove and try again. Yeah, pretty simple. So now I've finished, and if I click finish, you can see here now unsend forms 1. And it looks like it automatically synchronized, so I'm connected to the internet, so it just synchronized right away. But if I were disconnected, it would just say probably how many forms I have saved up and not submitted yet. You can also go in here and look at those, like in the options on the upper right. It will show you what forms you've created and submitted up till now. So you can click on the little filter button on the top right, and it'll show, all right, I want to see all my forms. Or I want to see only forms that I haven't sent yet, and so I have none there because I sent it already. Yeah, kind of a good way for the user to see what it is they've done so far. Yeah, so that's how it works on the phone. One thing that will come up is updating. So you might need to tell your users, I made a new version. I need you to update the app. So the way they can do that is by coming in here, clicking on the menu on the top right and clicking update. And what it does is looks for a new version, but actually it sees that the latest version, according to my web interface is 14, and so what I have on my phone here is 14, so it says there is no new version. But if there was a new version that was released, then it would find it and it would give the option to download it. So that's how updating works. So I think I'm gonna stop sharing for now. And
Just one question.
Yeah.
Is it possible to change your answers after submitting?
no, for this type of form, it is not possible. So that's kind of one of the big limitations of this type of form, of using the survey. So I think we're pretty much out of time. I don't really want to go any longer. We're at the end of the day. So maybe the way I'll end is to like touch on that, on what you could do in such a case, like if you did want to have that option to modify. And let me just reorganize my windows a little bit here. Yeah, so the user sends the data, it's gone. They have no more access to it. And then if they wanted to correct it, they might try and send another form with the right data, but then now you got an issue, you have duplicate data. And you've got to just sort that out. And that becomes kind of a huge mess. Especially like you only have 2 villages and 2 surveyors, so it's probably easy. But like when you have 100 ag agents out there, like you need to give them some ownership of their data. So that's where the case management thing comes into play. So what I would actually do in your instance is use this idea of case lists, where I want to be able to track items over time. And yeah, I guess this will just be like a little way to wrap up and like hint at maybe some of the next things we can talk about if we do another one of these calls. But what I would want to do is make a case type called BSAT farmer. And call this also BSAP, or farmer, BSAP farmer, whatever. Productor, productrice. And now kind of what I've done is create like a table, a blank table in CommCare servers, where each row in my table is going to be an individual farmer. And what any forms I make in this case list will either create a new farmer or update the record of a farmer that's already on there. So in your case, that's exactly what you want. And so this is probably the way to go. So I think like if we were to finish up building this form, the next thing I would do is actually just like copy that and paste it into a case list. And so I think it would be worth just taking a look quickly at the page they have here on case management for fundamentals. This would be a good way to just understand what it is you can do here. So you can imagine you've got a situation where you're tracking like pregnant mothers and their babies. So you could think, all right, I want to create a case list, and the title of that case list is going to be pregnant women. And so I send my user out to the village, and he's talking to women and saying, hey, are you pregnant? No? Okay, never mind. Are you pregnant? Yes. And so since that woman is pregnant, the form actually will create a case. It'll create a new record on that row. It'll give them a unique ID, And then now, like, they'll actually, on their phone, every time they open up their phone, when they open that case list, they'll see all the records that they've created so far. So, like in your case, you would have the list of the BSAP farmers here, and then when somebody clicked on it, then it would next lead to like a page with more, basically all the columns of data you have about that person that you want to show them. Because, so like in this case, you can see they clicked on somebody and now they can see a few data points about that person. So like you can think of like if you have just a spreadsheet with all of the farmers that you're working with, these would be the different rows on that spreadsheet. And then when you click on somebody, it's showing you, okay, for that row, what's the data we have in each column for that person. And so that's how that works. And then if I continue on and I actually fill out some forms for that specific case, it's going to either be like adding new data in, like adding more columns to the end of your spreadsheet, or changing something. So you can imagine, like in this case, this is a pregnant woman. Maybe one of their forms is like tracking symptoms, and if she's feeling some new symptom, you might add it. Their form might add another property. That's what they call them in CommCare, another property onto that case, and now you would see that here. You'd see like symptoms, nausea, or something like that. And then also it might say, like, it would record the date from that meeting, and now it would like recalculate the months till delivery, because now it's no longer 9 months, it's now 8 months or 6 months or whatever, depending on the date. So that's like that's the big advantage of using case lists. You can do really complex things. You can track things over time, and you can change data. So like with that kind of a setup, you can make it so that a user can go in and see what they've submitted before and change it if they realize they made a mistake. So I'm almost never using the regular surveys anymore, because it makes it a lot easier for the user to work with their data when they're using this case system, and it makes it easier for me, who has to actually deal with that data on the other end, to not have to have all kinds of errors that I have to sort through every time. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's all we can do now. It's the end of the day. So any final questions in the last 2 minutes? Otherwise, like, I think I'm gonna see if we can schedule like another one of these maybe next week. Christina, I think we'll try and finish your app before then. But yeah, I think there's a lot of other topics we can touch on, and of course I have to do this all over again in French. Yeah, Jeremy.
Yes, I had put a question in the chat. It's like if you have made a new version of the application, is the QR code required for making the update of this app?
No, it's not. So actually, if all my users have the app on their phone now, then they don't need any more codes. So if I click, you'll notice I actually did make some change and I saved it already, and so it's now saying you have updates to publish. So if I click on this now, and I click on make a new version. Oh, okay, it's giving me an error because I can't have a case list that's empty, so I'm going to delete that. And now make a new version, and it's probably going to be version 18. I guess I click save 4 times. And so now, if you'll notice, like, it's on version 18 now, but if I were to try and go on my phone and click update app, it's just going to be like, I don't see any new versions. The one I have is the latest version. So I just tried it. It's not finding it. I'm not going to go through the sharing of my screen. But now if I click released, now when I click on it, it has found the new version. And so I didn't need to send a new QR code or a new app code. As long as they have any of the older versions on their phone already, there's no need to share these again. It's just for somebody who doesn't have this app 2022 BSAT BO on their phone yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, just make sure that release is clicked. If release is not clicked, they won't see the app.
All right.
Clinton, sorry, just to follow up on this one.
Yeah.
So you're saying that once the app is already installed, like BSAP is already installed, any of the changes you make in the form, they are automatically displayed.
No, any changes I make, so right now users have access to version 18. Any change I make to this form,
And you click on release, then they become they can see the changes. Unless you click on release, they will not see the changes.
yeah, if I don't release it, if I don't deploy it and release it, if I don't publish it and release it, so if I change the spelling on here, avec les autres champs, and I save it, now we're on version 19, but I haven't even published that yet. So you notice now it's saying updates available to be published. The users still can only see version 18. They have no idea that I made this change and I've saved it. This change only exists in this online environment. So it's not until I actually go here and publish it, will this version even get like compiled and made, put together. But now you'll notice I now made version 19, but it's still in test. So in the field, I still wouldn't be able to see this one. I could click update app all day long and it would still only be like, you already have the latest version. So if I click release now they'll be able to see version 19 with the change.
But you didn't publish it. Even before publishing, they can see it.
I did actually. So yeah, this is a little misleading. I didn't click the button publish, but I made the new version. It's here and I click released. So publish, really this is just a way to get access to the barcode and the code. So this publish button actually doesn't do anything. Good question.
Thank you. Over. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely better than Google Forms. All right. Any other questions? So I'm gonna share this. I know some people are already in here, but I'm gonna share this in the hashtag CommCare MyAgro channel, and I'm pretty sure it's a public channel, so anybody can go in there and find it and join. I already added a bunch of people to it, so you can see this. And then again, if you need access to CommCare and you don't have like a username yet, just put in a request on the help desk that you want to be able to be an app editor, and you'll probably get access in no time. And yeah, I mean, just be responsible though. Like as an app editor, you actually have the ability to come in here and delete any app. So please don't. Just, yeah, if you want to make an app, maybe put in a request to the help desk, and there might be some sort of approval process, or someone can help you on the first steps. So just be careful. Like this is already really long, and we don't need like a bunch of apps that aren't actually going to be used. So yeah, make sure you do all that like planning ahead of time. You know what you're going to do for the app, and discuss it with the tech team. So yeah, good luck out there. And yeah, I'm gonna try and be like active on the CommCare channel. If anybody has any questions, I'm totally down to help debug some issues or show you how you can make it do something that you want it to do.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Clinton.
Yeah, pleasure. All right, we'll do this again sometime. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
And Christine,
Bye.
let's just
Yeah.
I'll be in touch with you over the next